We have gathered here for the book discussion event of our book, Dalit Studies, Key Terms and the Concepts. We have with us as a keynote speaker, Dr. Kalyani Valath ma'am. As a chair, we have Professor Prabal Das Gupta sir, and as panelists, we have Damayanti Das ma'am, Dhanesh Makulam sir, Anuba Anushi ma'am, Priyanka Chaudhary ma'am, and Sanjiv Vishwakarma sir. So today, this is the B.R. Ambedkar's birth anniversary. And on the birth anniversary of B.R. Ambedkar, in the morning, we have just launched the book at the Diksha Bhumi. This was a fantastic program. And at the hands of Dr. Kondekar sir, we have launched this book already. And now we are here for the discussion. I welcome you all. And I welcome, and I request my co-editor, Dr. Mahitosh Mandal sir, who is an assistant professor of English at Presidency University, Kolkata, to give the opening remarks of the program. Dr. Mandal sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kondekar. Am I visible?
Yes, sir, you are quite visible.
Okay, all right. I can't see myself. Okay, no problem. Yeah, all right. So a warm welcome to all of you. As Dr. Kondekar already mentioned, today is Ambedkar Jayanti, and we have gathered here on this occasion to introduce and discuss and launch our book. I just wanted to mention that this is the first inaugural session in a series of book discussion events that we're going to organize in course of time. This book is very relevant for us, specifically in the context of Ambedkar Jayanti, because obviously the entire anti-caste discourse and Dalit studies in particular is indebted to Babasaheb Ambedkar at multiple levels. Specifically, this book, Dalit Studies, Key Terms and Concepts, is dedicated to Babasaheb Ambedkar. There is a long dedication, which mentions why and how this book came into existence and the kind of inspiration we, as a group, have found in Ambedkar's works. So we also mentioned at the very beginning in the dedication of the book that anti-caste discourse in general and Dalit studies in particular is a series of footnotes to Babasaheb Ambedkar. Obviously, echoing the analogy in the context of Western philosophy, where Western philosophy is sometimes considered to be a series of footnotes to Plato. We have tried to contextualize Ambedkar's relevance in the context of anti-caste discourse as a series of footnotes to Babasaheb Ambedkar. It is not an overstatement. Throughout the book, almost every single page mentions Babasaheb Ambedkar's works. There are chapters which exclusively deals with Babasaheb Ambedkar's concepts and theorizations, including graded inequality, including the concept of annihilation, the slogan Jai Bhim, educate, agitate, organize, and much more. So obviously, it goes without saying that Babasaheb Ambedkar is at the center of this discourse that we are going to hold today. Why did we, conceptualize this book the way it has come out eventually? First of all, this is the fruit of a dedicated, sustained engagement with anti-caste discourse over 3 years. So 30 contributors across the country, in fact, across the globe, have put in a lot of effort across 3 years' time to come up with these books. Drafts were written, rewritten, revised multiple times to ultimately finalize what we have in the form of the book. But once again, the question is, why did we think of this book at this level? Obviously, because of a lacuna. So there is a lacuna we found in the existing anti-caste discourse. If we consider Dalit studies to be a discipline that came into existence in the 1990s, the general consensus among the scholars is that the origins of Dalit studies can be traced back in the 1990s. So in that sense, the discipline is about 35 years old. However, in the last 35 years, except for one volume, which also deals with the field in a rather general manner, there has not been a single publication exclusively dedicated to engaging critically with the foundational concepts of Dalit studies. We are using all these terms all the time, sometimes casually, taking a lot of liberty, using our own, kind of flexibility. But at the end of the day, we need to have these terms collected together, analyzing them, engaging with them critically, developing on the genealogy of the terms and the concepts. And this has not been done. This was not done before our book came into existence. So that was a major lacuna. So what does this book do? Dalit Studies Key Terms and Concepts addresses and articulates the grammar and vocabulary of the field. The grammar and vocabulary of the field. We focus on the fundamentals of the discipline. It is very significant to focus on the fundamentals of the discipline. It's very significant to look into the foundational concepts and try and understand the nuances of the concepts before we can even use them in our critical scholarship. And obviously, this is very significant not only from a scholarly perspective, not only from a research perspective, but also from an ethical perspective. We are inspired once again by Baba Saheb Ambedkar, who in a speech on Rana Day, Gandhi and Jinnah mentioned that he didn't have much faith in this concept that great ideas will survive or sustain on their own. He didn't believe in this idea that you can kill a man, but you cannot kill an idea. He said that emancipatory ideas must be propagated actively. We must take initiatives to propagate emancipatory ideas. The ideas and concepts and terms and notions discussed and analyzed and critiqued in our book are emancipatory ideas, ideas that can help us interpret the Dalit cause, articulate the Dalit cause, advance the Dalit cause, and thereby contribute in whatever humble manner to conceptualization of a casteless society. It's very, very significant, therefore, we thought, from both an academic, scholarly point of view and from an ethical point of view, that this book is very significant. This book on the foundational concepts, the fundamentals of the discipline of Dalit studies, therefore, for us, from a scholarly and ethical perspective, appeared to be relevant. Now, obviously, why the title Dalit Studies? Why did we call it Dalit Studies and not, let's say, call it critical caste studies? Some scholars and students of Dalit literature and Dalit studies might raise this question. Obviously, we thought and we believe that Dalit studies is the term to take forward. Obviously, critical caste studies, Gajendra Ayathurai has described it as a subfield, not a field as such, but a subfield. Dalit studies is a very significant term and foundationally relevant for us. Dalit studies is obviously dealing with the question of caste oppression. So oppression, oppressor, and oppressed. So Dalit studies is obviously talking about the caste oppressed, caste oppression, the process of mechanism of caste oppression, and also about the caste oppressor, the dominant caste oppressor, in whatever terminology we talk about that. But then, at the end of the day, Dalit studies has Dalits as the central protagonists. Obviously, every caste sufferer is a protagonist of Dalit studies. Every caste sufferer, whether it's a Dalit convert, whether it's the minorities, whether it's women in general, whether it's the lowered castes, to use a term coined by Dalit Mandal, not the lower caste, but lowered castes. But in general, Dalit studies deals with all these questions of caste oppression, caste oppressed, caste oppressor from a Dalit perspective. The Dalit perspective becomes very significant. From Dalit perspective, theorizing these terms and concepts using Dalit methodology. That is what becomes important. So we need to. So Dalit studies, therefore, fundamentally, tries to theorize what is Dalit methodology, what is Dalit perspective. That is very significant. Whenever we talk about caste, we need to adopt a Dalit perspective. We need to adopt, as it were, a Dalit methodology, so to say. Obviously, another point is about the term Dalit itself. Once again, usually some people feel embarrassed to use the term Dalit. But as one of the chapters on Dalit in this volume, I authored it, which mentions and exhaustively develops on the genealogy of the term Dalit. Fundamentally speaking, Dalit not only means has a sense of victimhood. The term also embodies a semantic duality. The semantic duality between victimhood on the one hand and resistance on the other hand. The moment you recognize your victimhood, that very moment of anti-caste consciousness, realization is what leads to resistance. So Dalit studies is as much about the suffering caused by caste system as it is about the resistance against the caste system. So, I mean, it's very, very significant, the semantic duality. So it is therefore about the book, therefore, at the same time, it talks about, how Dalits and the caste sufferers in general have been victimized by the caste system. But it also talks about their empowerment, the kind of intellectual tradition they have developed. But also, it tries to dismantle caste oppression and caste oppressors, opening up a possibility of self-questioning on the part of the caste oppressors. Obviously, I've talked a lot. I was supposed to speak for 5 minutes. I'll just, end. Obviously, I'm not getting into this discussion of the contents. The metadata about the book is available on the internet, on Routledge website, on Taylor and Francis website. But I just want to make a last remark about the cover image of the book. This is the paperback edition, of course, the cover image of the book. I'm very proud to say that this cover image was chosen by my dear friend and co-editor, Dr. Sanjiv Kondekar. We were, trying to look into all the options were given to us by Routledge, exploring the Getty images. And this is the final image we chose. What does it imply? Obviously, as you can see, perhaps on the screen, you can interpret it in many different ways, but one of the ways we try to interpret it is that you can see the finches are transforming into birds. I hope you can see that. The finches are transforming into birds. What we tried to, we conceived of and we thought of when we chose this image is that this is the very core of Dalit studies and anti-caste discourse. What is the core of Dalit studies and anti-caste discourse? Is that in order to create a casteless society, we must work towards a structural transformation of society. We cannot have just casual changes talked about here and there, but we need a foundational, fundamental, structural transformation. The way the structure of the finches are transforming into birds, into liberation. Similarly, the structures of caste need to be dismantled in order for casteless society to be created, for to be freed from caste. With these remarks, I end. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us today. I would now request Dr. Kondekar to take it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mandal sir, for setting the tone of the discussion event. Now, this is the turn of now contributor speakers. First, I will invite Dr. Damayanti Das, who has contributed to this volume, one chapter on Dalit literature. Before inviting her, I want to read her bio note. Damayanti Das is a PhD scholar in the Department of English at Raiganj University, West Bengal, India. She has been awarded the Junior Research Fellowship by the University Grants Commission. Previously, she earned an MPhil from the Department of English, Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata, examining the politics of identity and representation in select Marathi Dalit writings by Baby Kamble and Urmila Pawar. Her research interests include the Anthropocene, Dalit studies, diaspora studies, post-humanism, and intersectional feminism. Her latest article, Racism Learned and Unlearned, Locating Afro-Diasporic Experiences in India in the Shade of You by Anushree Majumdar, has been published in the Journal of Global Post-Colonial Studies. I invite Dr. Damayanti Das to put forward her views. And you
Sir,
have,
am I
7
audible?
minutes. Yeah, you are audible.
Sir, should I keep my video on or off?
You can keep your video on, no problem.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, sir, I just wanted to mention that I haven't been awarded a PhD yet. I have submitted my PhD. So
No
I'm
problem.
not a doctor yet.
That's
so.
fine. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, sir. So I start my discussion here. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Mahitosh Mandal and Dr. Sanjiv Kondekar, the editors of the book, Dalit Studies, Key Terms and Concepts, for giving me the opportunity to write the article, Dalit Literature, for the volume. For me, Dalit literature is a political and literary medium of self-assertion and self-representation for Dalits rooted in Phule Ambedkarite ideology. Dalit literature has several purposes, including destigmatizing the Dalit counterpublics, questioning the Savarna gaze, challenging the dominant casteist historiography, and at the same time it aims at education, equal opportunities, human rights, and a casteless society. When I was first asked to write a chapter for this volume, I wondered in which way I can meaningfully contribute to this volume, because on internet, in edited books, in journals, there are entries on Dalit literature. But after doing my literature review, I realized that in all the discussions, Dalit literature is presented in a fragmented way, because in most of the cases, there is a tendency to conflate the idea of Dalit literature or Dalit literary movement with Marathi Dalit literary movement, because Marathi Dalit literary movement is the most prominent one in India also or globally also. And at the same time, there is also a tendency to focus on the growth of Dalit literature in the southern states. I mean, the southern states of India are clubbed together, and there is a discussion on Dalit literature in those states. But I think this kind of representation of Dalit literature is fragmented, at the same time kind of monolithic, because Dalit literary movement and Dalit literature is heterogeneous, because Dalit literary movement started in different states under different circumstances in different in different timelines, even though in some states it started almost simultaneously. So in order to bring all the aspects of Dalit literature, focusing especially on the specificities of the genealogy of the Dalit literary movement in different states, I have included in my chapter total 9 states in which Dalit literature has a very strong corpus. Comparatively, some states like Odisha and West Bengal has a little weaker corpus, according to me, when it is compared to the corpus in Tamil Nadu or in Maharashtra. So the states I have included in my discussion are Maharashtra, Punjab, Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, West Bengal, and Odisha. And at the same time, besides doing a state-wise survey, I have also included in my discussion some South Asian countries like Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka in the chapter, to see how the term Dalit and Dalit literature is received in those countries, because in these countries like for example, in Sri Lanka or in Pakistan or in Bangladesh, Dalit is still not recognized as a political category of self-identification. So how Dalit literature is thriving in those states, I have also tried to see. And apart from this, I have also included and tried to answer some general questions like the definition of Dalit literature, the major themes of Dalit literature, and also the question of aesthetics. I mean, I have tried to write about the clash between the classical Sanskritized literary tradition based on rasa theory, that is the theory of beauty and pleasure, to judge Dalit literature, and as and the alternative aesthetics put forward by Sharan Kumar Limbale to judge Dalit literature, which is basically informed by Phule Ambedkarite ideology and also is rooted in pain, anger, and suffering, which are the trademarks of Dalit literature, in my opinion. And apart from that, I have also tried to trace the origin of anti-caste literature back to the Bhakti period, because generally in the discussion of Dalit literature, growth of Dalit literature, post-Ambedkarite period from the 1970s period is given more prominence. So I have traced the origin. At the same time, I have I have talked about the politics of translation of Dalit literature. I mean, how far the authenticity of Dalit literature can be maintained in the translation, while at the same time, translation, especially translation in English, is the absolute necessity to break the linguistic and the geographical barriers. And here I also want to add, which I mean, this is a point which I think didn't occur to many. That is where there is always a stress to translate Dalit literature into English, because English is a linked language. I think Dalit literature should be translated also from one vernacular to another, because there are a lot of people in India who are interested in Dalit literature, but since they do not have access to that one particular vernacular, because most of the people in India know only 2 or 3 languages, mostly. So suppose I am a Bengali and I want to read read literature, Dalit literary text in Tamil, but I don't know English. What should I do? In that case, there is a chance of deprivation. So I think translators, which I have mentioned in the book, should also take a note of that. At the same time, at the end of my chapter, I have also noted there is a growth of number of Anglophone Dalit literary texts.
Would be good if you wind up.
Hello? Yes, sir? Hello?
Wind up your hello. Can you hear me?
Just give me a few seconds, sir. Okay, I am winding it. So Anglophone Dalit authors like Thenmoji Soundararajan, Yashika Dutt, Suraj Iyengde, Jogesh Maitra, they are writing in English, choosing English to write, because English for them is a casteless modern language which can evade the caste-based stigma. So these are the topics I have included in my chapter. So here I end.
Thank you very much, Das ma'am. Thank you very much. Now I invite Dr. Dhanesh Mankulam, who has contributed 2 chapters to our volume, Dalit Historiography and De-Brahmanization. Before I invite him, I give a brief introduction to him. Dhanesh Mankulam is an assistant professor in the Department of English and Cultural Studies, School of Arts and Humanities, CRISE, deemed to be University, Bangalore, India. He holds a PhD in English from Kannur University, Kerala. His doctoral research focused on the novels and philosophies of O.V. Vijayan and Milan Sundara. He received the Herman Hesse Foundation Endowment Fellowship during his doctoral research. He has recently published with Routledge and other publishers. With more than 10 publications, his research output contributes to the field of literary studies, cultural studies, contemporary discourse studies, and critical social theories. So I invite Dr. Dhanesh Mankulam, sir.
Thank you,
7 minutes,
sir.
sir.
Hope I'm
7 minutes.
Yeah,
Audible,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. So, good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be part of this volume, Dalit Studies, Key Terms and Concepts. I thank the editors for the opportunity. As mentioned earlier, we are speaking on the Ambedkar Jayanti Day, remembering the contributions of Dr. Ambedkar, whose intellectual and political work continues to shape the foundations of Dalit studies in the country and the critical caste discourses as well. At the same time, recent incidents such as the tragic case of a medical student suicide in Kerala linked to caste discrimination by his own teacher remind us that these issues are still alive as our everyday reality. They remain deeply present in our institutions and everyday life as well. So it is within this context that this book becomes especially significant. This volume is built around a clear objective to examine key terms and concepts in Dalit studies that are widely used but not always critically analyzed. In many academic and public discussions, concepts such as Brahmanism, marginality, resistance, caste, and identity are frequently invoked. However, their meanings are often assumed rather than carefully examined. This book addresses the gap by providing historically grounded and analytically rigorous discussions of such concepts. A key strength of the volume is its attention to genealogy and context. So I have contributed 2 chapters to this volume. My first chapter deals with Dalit historiography. As we know, historiography refers to the methods and perspectives through which history is written. In the context of Indian historical accounts, the way it is written itself has discriminatory coloring built within it. In the Indian context, dominant historiographical traditions have often given limited space to Dalit experiences, caste-based experiences, and all those associated discriminatory practices as well, and have treated caste often as a secondary issue than the compared to the other national issues. Dalit historiography emerges as a response to this limitation. It emphasizes the need to write history from the perspective of those who have been historically marginalized and to recognize that history itself is shaped by power relations. The chapter discusses how Dalit historiography questions dominant narratives, expands the range of historical sources to include oral traditions and cultural memory as well, and foregrounds experiences of caste-based exclusion and resistance. It also engages with broader frameworks such as subaltern studies, critical caste studies, etc., while highlighting the specificity of caste as a distinct analytical category to the Indian socio-cultural realities. My second chapter focuses on de-Brahmanization. This is presented as a concept, as a critical positionality, and as a method as well. This concept refers to the process of questioning and challenging dominance of Brahmanical logics in social, cultural, and intellectual spheres. The chapter is about critically examining a system of hierarchy that has historically shaped access to knowledge, authority, meaning, and social power. The chapter approaches de-Brahmanization at multiple levels as a social process that challenges caste hierarchy, as an institutional process that interrogates structures within education and knowledge systems, and as an epistemological process that questions what counts as valid knowledge. In this sense, it is closely linked to questions of representation, access, and intellectual authority as well. Both these chapters, both these concepts, Dalit historiography and de-Brahmanization, are connected at a deeper level as well. Dalit historiography focuses on how history is written and whose experiences are included, while de-Brahmanization focuses on the structures of power that influence what is considered legitimate knowledge and meaning. Together, they help us understand not only the absence of certain voices, but also the reasons behind that absence. These discussions are especially relevant today. Caste continues to operate in multiple forms, sometimes visible and sometimes in more subtle ways within institutions and everyday practices, as we see in the recent Kerala issue, for example, without clear and critically examined concepts, it becomes difficult to analyze contemporary social realities effectively. To conclude, the chapters in this book contribute to Dalit studies by providing clarity on key concepts, situating them within historical and social context, and encouraging more rigorous critical engagements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your pointed talk. Now I invite Dr. Anubha Anushri, ma'am, who has contributed disability and the Dalit. So I introduce her. Anubha Anushri teaches at the University of Delhi and had previously been a lecturer in the civic, liberal and global education program at Stanford University from 2022 to 2024, where she also earned a PhD in history. Her thesis, The Moral Republic, Corruption in Colonial and Post-Colonial India, examines political trust, public morality, and governmental legitimacy in colonial and democratic India. Her research has appeared in the journal Itinerario and in the edited volume Corruption, Empire, and Colonialism in the Modern Era, A Global Perspective. Currently, Anubha is researching the history of disability in South Asia. I invite Anubha ma'am, to put forward her views.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mandal and Dr. Kondekar for putting this important volume together and also giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I would like to begin by suggesting that my remarks here are merely indicative and preliminary in nature. As Dr. Kondekar described, my dissertation research has been different, and I'm sort of starting to move in the direction of thinking more closely at the intersection of disability and Dalit identity. So I do not claim to offer any comprehensive or detailed analysis. I do think that just as a topic of the discussion today, disability and caste makes us appreciate the imperfect, the partial, the defective and transitional. My assessment is, at this stage at least, very partial and incomplete. So broadly, in my entry to the volume on disability and the Dalit, I claim that precarity has caste. Beyond simply assimilating disability as another lens through which caste functions, what my entry in this volume argues is that caste and disability need to be understood together to, one, recognize the systemic violence of caste, and two, create a possibility of healing, solidarity, and emancipation. I will begin with an anecdote that some of you may already be familiar with. So about a month into COVID-19 lockdown in India, a 15-year-old girl, Jyoti Kumari, a Bahujan, cycled more than 1,200 kilometers to bring her injured father home from Gurgaon to Bihar. The story went viral, media across the world celebrated her resilience, and she was called as the girl who cycled to save her father. But what this celebration obscured was equally important. Her father, a disabled migrant worker, was not seen as a subject of resilience or suffering in his own right, nor did the narrative account for the structural conditions that made such an act necessary in the first place. In fact, the father died a year later. So what we see here is a familiar pattern, the glorification of individualized care and resilience that erases disability, obscures caste-based precarity, and reinforces an ableist narrative of survival through personal strength alone. So I begin with the story to think through the relationship between two critical frameworks of our times, Dalit studies and disability studies. And my argument is twofold. First, Dalit identity is not just about caste. It is deeply entangled with forms of disablement, both material and symbolic. Second, bringing Dalit and disability frameworks together allows us to move beyond essentialist understandings of identity that Dr. Mandal talked about in his introduction. The introduction to the volume also elaborates on this argument. And so putting together the Dalit and disability framework allows us to think more closely about the relational and intersectional approach to resistance and healing. I define the intersection of caste and disability as a form of toxic ableism, a regime that not only privileges bodily and cognitive normalcy, but actively produces graded hierarchies of humanity. Within Brahmanical order, purity, perfection, and control become markers of full humanity, while caste-marked bodies are rendered inherently deficient, polluted, or incomplete. Disability here is not incidental. It is central to how caste organizes difference. Disability, as I use in my entry, is not limited to bodily impairment. Following scholars such as Susan Wendell, disability emerges through the interaction between bodies and environments, through social attitudes, infrastructures, and systemic exclusions. So in this sense, disability is not simply a condition, it is a relationship to the world shaped by power. So this allows us to think about ableism, not just as discrimination, but as a broader system that privileges certain bodies and minds as normal, complete, or fully human. Ableism is sustained through what we might call as a logic of toxic perfectibility, a desire for coherence, control, and bodily integrity. So my claim is that caste operates through a similar logic. The Brahmanical order not only organizes hierarchy, it produces and polices ideas of bodily purity, capacity, and worth. In that sense, caste is not just analogous to disability, it does not just resemble disability, it actively produces forms of disablement. And there is a violence inherent in this process. And this violence I describe at two levels. There's one which is structural violence, which is produced through exclusion, structural exclusion, stigma, spatial segregation, and denial of resources. Empirical and material violence is produced through active processes of bodily injury, malnutrition, environmental exposure, and psychological harm. Again, disablement here is not just a metaphor, it is produced through everyday conditions of life. Then how do we conceive of Dalit emancipatory politics? And this is what I'm more interested in thinking with, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to write on this in my entry to this volume. So I think, in my view, Dalit emancipatory practices emphasize at an epistemological level the brokenness or incompleteness of history. And one entry, Dalit Historiography, it analyzes precisely this incompleteness of history, of Dalit history. At a material level, this historiography emphasizes collective survival and interdependence than individual autonomy. And it becomes clearer.
Please wind up, ma'am.
Yes, yes. So it becomes, I'll just use this quotation to demonstrate my argument, which is from B.R. Ambedkar. So in Ambedkar's writings, especially his introduction in Who Were the Untouchables, Ambedkar offers not just a critique of caste, but an alternative epistemology, which is grounded in uncertainty, fragmentation, and humility. And he compares the writing of history of untouchability to reconstructing a body from scattered bones. Knowledge in this sense is always partial, provisional, and imperfect, and which is what I call as constructing the broken historiography of Dalit is also a way of thinking with an epistemology of vulnerability. And so I'd like to conclude by thinking again with bringing Dalit and disability frameworks together. And I argue that bringing them together pushes us towards a politics that takes vulnerability seriously, not as a weakness, but as a condition for ethical and political engagement. Thank you again for this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for your invaluable insights. Now I invite Dr. Priyanka Chaudhary, ma'am, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Motilal Nehru College, University of Delhi, India. She obtained her PhD from the Department of Political Science, University of Delhi. Her doctoral thesis examined the issues of citizenship and the development of nomadic community in Rajasthan. Her research areas include citizenship issues of nomadic and semi-nomadic communities in India, housing policies for nomads and state appropriation in colonial India. Her research on the Gadia Lohar of Rajasthan and on nomadic and sedentary identities has respectively been published in Research Analysis and Evaluation and International Journal of Recent Scientific Research. Priyanka Chaudhary, ma'am. You can unmute and speak. You can unmute and speak.
I was trying to figure out where's the unmute.
Yeah,
Hello.
that's fine now.
I cannot see myself. Am I visible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you're visible.
All right. First of all, I would like to thank the editors of the book to actually giving me this opportunity, because this topic and this whole idea where you have built the book upon is really close to my heart, because this was introduced to me as an MA student in JNU when I was taught by Gopal Guru and Valerian Rodriguez, and how the youth of the country and we are actually responsible to bringing in the changes that Ambedkar actually thought about. And it gives us a lot of responsibility. It keeps us at the position where we need to do a lot. And this is a great opportunity for me personally. So thank you so much. I have actually contributed 2 chapters to the book, where since we are talking about the key concepts and the terms, I have tried to weave around the academic idea of the concept of caste. So in this chapter, and also since it's coming from my perspective, where I looked at these nomadic communities who were actually never a part of the caste system, but were somehow dragged into it, and the history has not been very kind to them. And even the colonial modernity and the neoliberal liberal times after independence haven't brought any relief to these nomadic communities. So the idea of caste that I have seen is somewhere getting the problem or the complexity on how the colonial government understood it. So the whole classification of looking at caste as a functional category is problematic from my opinion. And I have tried to look at the history of academic discourses around caste in my chapter on caste. And then to even further problematize it, how in present times we see there is a rise in casteism, there is a rise in caste discrimination, which was never actually thought of, even from people like Ambedkar, who would have thought that constitutional modernity is going to actually annihilate the caste, as we go from both approaches, from top to down and from the social transformation that he envisioned. But somehow we are at the place where neither the caste is resolving in theory, nor it is resolving itself in the realities in the society. And I feel that somewhere the modernity in itself has failed to address the issues of the caste. Talking to this same analogy, my second chapter is Kshatriyization. So while Ambedkar proposed the idea of transforming the society first from the top to down and then bringing the social transformation, these communities who are never located into the caste mainstream, who could have been the Adivasis or the nomadics, who were not the Dalits, who were not the into the Varna system, they made their own idea of social mobility. And Kshatriyization is that phenomena where the communities try to associate with the dominant caste, the Kshatriyas specifically, which are closer to their vicinity, and try to pick up the rituals, the customs, which are already very problematic. So, for example, a lot of scholars have talked about how the gender relations in a tribal society could have been much more at equilibrium. But when we see that these same communities try to come up as a Kshatriya caste, then the whole gender dynamics transforms, because caste system has never been egalitarian or equality based in context of gender. And we see that somewhere Kshatriyization becomes this idea. It's like when Sanskritization happened in certain parts of the country, where the lower caste tried to rise upon the social ladder to just to maintain or sustain their being in the society. And I have looked at certain communities, including the one I was working with in my PhD, the Gadia Lohars, but also in certain northeastern part of the country, where we see that now these communities who earlier, during the colonial times, during the post-independence times, when they were trying to assert or find out their identity, and they associated with the Kshatriya community or any community in their neighborhood, and now suddenly they are at the point where they are neither socially accepted, not at the political advantage, because none of the affirmative actions ever reached them. And again, I will come to the beginning of the first chapter, where I talked about how colonial government misinterpreted the whole caste classification. And we need to come to a consensus where we believe that caste has never been a functional categorization. It cannot be seen as a categorization which has favored us or helped us in any way. Rather, it is essentially a graded inequality, as Ambedkar puts it. It's essentially a system where one community
Please wind up, ma'am. Please.
One community is trying to assert its dominance and make the whole set of rules in their own favor by suppressing the other community. So with this, I would like to end my brief introduction of my chapters. Thank you so much again. Thank you for the editors to giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Priyanka, ma'am. Now I invite Dr. Sanjiv Kumar Vishwakarma, who has contributed 2 articles to this volume, Dalit Environmentalism and Dalitization. Briefly, I introduce Dr. Vishwakarma, sir. Vishwakarma is an assistant professor of English at DDU Gorakhpur University, India. Previously, he worked as an assistant professor at Sri Ram Swarup Memorial University, Lucknow, India, and Akal University, Bhatinda, India. He earned his doctoral degree from the University of Allahabad. His research areas include partition literature of India, literature of precarity, and environmental humanities. Some of his recent publications include a chapter in Nationalism and Indian Cinema and 2 book reviews in the Journal of Post-Colonial Writing. Sanjiv Kumar Vishwakarma, sir. 7 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would like to finish in 7 minutes. Thank you. I would first like to thank Dr. Sanjiv sir and Dr. Mahitosh sir for giving me this opportunity to contribute 2 chapters in this volume. Basically, I shall be speaking on my 1 chapter, which is on Dalit environmentalism. The second chapter which I have contributed in this book is Dalitization, which heavily relies on Kacha Ilaya's book, why I am not a Hindu, and how he seeks to integrate or Dalitize Dalit, not only Dalits, but also the Bahujan identity like OBCs into this fold, and how he also views to include women, not only from Dalit and OBC communities, but also from upper caste and forward communities, in order to view the oppression, the nature of oppression, which actually renders them as Dalit, on quote. So this is just brief introduction or remark on the chapter on Dalitization. And now I come to the chapter Dalit environmentalism. Before Sir Mahitosh actually asked me to write this chapter, I was already working on it. And there is one condition with this idea, like it has been systematically neglected how caste and environment intersect into the daily lives of Dalits specifically. And the issue that I have tried to highlight in this chapter is the comparative study of the Brahminical formations of environmental philosophies and epistemologies, and how Dalit interactions and entanglements with the environment are quite distinct. But the emphasis is that it is not like I have tried to negate the idea of Hindu Brahminical formations of environmentalism. Rather, I have tried to critique the idea of this argument, which is known as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which has been taken from Upanishad. And there, the whole phrase as we can call it like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the whole planet or whole globe is a family, has been appropriated in a political discourse. But basically, in the original source, it does not deal with the whole idea of environmental philosophy. Rather, it is about a discussion between two people, how they view kinship between humans and humans. And therefore, I have tried to depart from this idea and rendering it as anthropocentric view when looking at human-human relationship, and tried to explore this Dalit environmentalism with two key arguments. One is by Mukul Sharma, who is the pioneering scholar in this field, and his book Dalit Ecology, specially published 2 years ago, which also provides a foundational idea for this whole chapter. And also from Kancha Ilaya's, again, idea on the productivity of labor and how Dalit labor is more connected, or Dalit subject, the Dalit body is more connected to the environmental conditions, which are not oppressive, which are not exploitative, but mutually working together as productive labor. So I would just like to put my ideas in this chapter in a brief discussion or brief argument. Like, there are two conditions which we actually need to focus on, whether it's urban Dalit ecologies or rural Dalit ecologies or in general Dalit ecologies. Like, Dalit subject and Dalit body have been systematically and very consciously erased from the spaces of production and consumption. Let it be the items produced in factories that we actually consume at home, or the agricultural yield or produce that we actually see into villages. So when we look at the overall production, we find the final product which feels like it is going to contribute into the development of a nation, like green revolution we can call, like the farmers revolution we can call, or like whole agrarian system that has sustained from the beginning of, let's say, the plantationocene period. The argument is that even we cannot understand this involvement and erasure of Dalit from slow violence perspective also, which is the theory given by Rob Nixon. Because the violence that is happening in ecology, according to Nixon, is attritional, very slow, generational. But the violence that is happening with Dalits specifically, it is hereditary. It is so slow that we cannot view it as violence. It is not visible, fine, but it never takes a form of, let's say, becoming spectacular. In slow violence of Nixon, it becomes spectacular, like climate crisis we see, like global warming, everything. But in Dalit case, it is not becoming like this. Therefore, theories fail to address Dalit environmentalism. So here I have tried to locate how Dalits have been part of the production. They have been dealing with the waste, the labor, the industry, the tanneries. They are working into the heat space of brick-kiln factories that even Mukul Sharma also discusses. But the final impression that we have about our agriculture, about our economy, we never find Dalit as the subject and body involved into the productive of labor force. So the idea of Dalit environmentalism actually tries to locate Dalit into these spheres and view that this kind of eraser, which is quite visible after reading writings of Dalit authors, uh, is actually either dismissed or it is unacknowledged, because more emphasis goes on the social, cultural, and let's say identity formations or identity crises of Dalits, and therefore environmental issues are overlooked. Yes, I am winding up. So this chapter actually tries to view Dalits in the context of environment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all contributors for just speaking here. Now, it is my honor to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Kalyani Valath, ma'am. Before that, I introduce her. Her biodata is so long, but I will keep it short. Dr. Kalyani Valath is a pioneering educationist and a distinguished presence in the field of English language and literature. An educational entrepreneur, editor, and teacher, her professional journey is marked by innovation, vision, and sustained commitment to academic excellence. Driven by her passion for English education, she founded Total English Solutions in Thiruvananthapuram in 1999 with the mission of bringing quality English language trainings to learners, including those from the remote parts of India. This initiative has evolved into Valath Education, now a premier destination for students seeking to build meaningful careers in English language and literature. Her commitment to bridging academic gaps is further reflected in her publishing initiative. She has brought out a range of distinctive titles valued by students and scholars alike, most notably the path-breaking contemporary encyclopedia series, comprising volumes on British literature of the Americas, Indian literature, and literary criticism. Additional titles in the series are currently in progress. Dr. Kalyani Valath's innovative pedagogical methods, dedication to accessible education, and sustained contribution to literary scholarship have made a lasting impact on English studies across India. It is my honor to invite Dr. Kalyani Valath, ma'am, for a keynote address. Valath, ma'am.
Thank you, Sanjiv. Good evening, respected chair, distinguished scholars, and friends. It is both a great privilege as well as a very personal moment for me to be part of this event and these profound discussions. I will be talking about Dalit thought and the making of Indian modernity with relevance to history, pedagogy, and the continuing relevance of Dalit studies today. The release of an academic book like this is not just a ceremonial event. It is also putting ideas out there into the society when thought becomes contestable and therefore teachable. A book like Dalit Studies, Key Concepts and Terms, edited by Mahitosh, Mandal, and Sanjiv Kondekar, is especially significant because this book consolidates a field, it sharpens the field of the discourse of Dalit studies, and in many ways continues a pedagogic discussion and a pedagogic tradition. So recently I asked one of my students a very basic question. What does it mean to understand India? Does understanding India mean knowing its classical texts or its philosophy or political movements, or does understanding India mean engaging with the social exclusions and tensions and silences that have shaped our society and history? And all my students said that understanding India is to understand its people, both past and present, powerful and powerless, those who are at the center and those who are at the margins. India is where those outside the center begin to articulate their histories and thoughts, as we all know. This book, I would suggest, emerges precisely from such questions. It recognizes that Dalit studies is not simply an area within the humanities. It is not just a subsidiary paper that we teach in the classroom, in an English literature classroom, but Dalit studies as an intervention in history. It is an intervention in the history of thought. As this book asserts from the very beginning, Dalits have agency. Dalit is a way of life, a praxis that, along with many others, defined our nation. Dalit is not just a passive object of study. It is from this understanding that this book begins. There is another important fact that the editors remind us of. Ideas do not sustain themselves automatically. Ideas must be taught, debated in the classrooms and in books, and actively disseminated. Otherwise, they run the risk of being forgotten, misunderstood, or misappropriated, or even neutralized or ignored. So in this sense, this book, as well as any book for that matter, is an intellectual intervention. Mandal and Kondekar's book seeks to provide the conceptual grammar of a field that is still evolving and is still contested. To appreciate the true significance of such a work, I would first situate this book within a broader understanding of India as a confluence of multiple cultural streams. It is a space where Vedic, Shramanic, Bhakti, and vernacular traditions intersect and overlap, and many times conflict also. India is certainly not one stream of thought. It is many streams conflicting and confluencing. In the rich cultural matrix of India, knowledge is not detached or abstract, but knowledge is embedded in social practices. Knowledge is embedded in performances, in lived experiences. Indian knowledge systems that has recently been recognized as a very major aspect of education by the government. Indian knowledge systems challenge the idea that intellectual traditions must always be homogeneous, Brahminical, textual, elite, universal. No. Indian knowledge systems attest to the diversity of Indian thought. And it is in this context that Dalit studies acquires its full significance. The values, traditions, meanings that make up India emerge not from its centers, but from its margins. Unlike the massive cultural production that signaled modernity in the West, modernity in the West is simultaneous with the 18th century rise of middle class and the emergence of the industries and the industrial revolution. But Indian modernity is totally different. In India, modernity was a complex, negotiated process of rationally critiquing and reforming India's traditions. Even though historically, Indian modernity is associated with the 19th century Renaissance movements of primarily Maharashtra and Bengal, incidentally, the two states from where our editors are from, arguably modernity dawned in sparks everywhere in India, wherever and whenever traditional values were reinterpreted to fit new social demands. Modernity emerged wherever and whenever rigid caste hierarchies were questioned, or spiritual humanism raised its voice against conservatism and orthodoxy. Let us consider the long trajectory of anti-caste thought laid out in our book, edited by Mandal and Kondekar. We have listened to many of the contributors already. They have started from Buddha's ethical rejection of hierarchy in the 5th or 6th century BC, to the radical voices of the Bhakti poets like Kabirdas and Ravidas, Surdas, to the Bhakti poets in the 15th or 16th century. From the educational revolution initiated by Jyotirao and Savitribai Phule, to the rational critique of Periyar in the 19th century. All this culminating in the systematic, constitutional, and philosophical interventions of Ambedkar, who was born on this very day many years ago, to whom Mandal and Kondekar have dedicated this book. Throughout this history, there emerges a continuous tradition of questioning, of resistance, of reimagining traditions. It gives me goosebumps to think of that tradition, the alternative tradition that has shaped India. What unites these thinkers who are discussed in this book? They are all opposed to the Indian caste system, yes. But they are also united by their attempt to redefine the very basis of social life in India. Ambedkar's notion of graded inequality, for example, discussed by Abdul Majid Nurul Amin, I guess he is not one of the speakers, for instance, reveals caste not as a simple binary of oppression and privilege, but as a complex hierarchy sustained throughout internalized structures of dominance and subordination. His call for the annihilation of caste is therefore not a moral appeal. It is a demand to transform the very foundations of Indian society itself. And that transformation is the very basis of modernity. And we are enjoying the benefits of that modernity that has emerged from these alternative thinkers and alternative traditions. Let us pause here and ask, what does it mean to annihilate caste in a society where caste has shaped the very modes of thought, perception, and knowledge? Would annihilating caste be like annihilating ourselves? Because the caste system is so deeply ingrained within us even now. That is why we have to question it. That is why we need such books. This is a question that is still relevant today as it is in Ambedkar's time. Turning to my own state of Kerala, I see how anti-caste thought has been central to regional modernities as well. Figures like Ayangali and Narayana Guru in Kerala are often remembered as reformers, but they are much more than that. They must be understood as architects of Kerala's democratic ethos. We have to stop thinking of them as, thinkers on the side. After we have talked about all the main thinkers, now let us talk about the Dalit thinkers. Not like that. Ayangani's struggles for access to education, public space, and dignity were interventions into the very structure of society with far-reaching effects. Narayana Guru's emphasis on equality and ethical humanism challenged hierarchies deeply entrenched in the social imaginary, offering a vision of social life that transcended narrow religious or caste identities. A vision that is still, unfortunately, a distant dream because caste has been politicized. Caste is now a weapon. As with all subaltern thinkers and writers, our Dalit writers are also often domesticated, reduced to icons, stripped of their radical potential. They are reduced to the pages of textbooks, but we should relentlessly bring them to the mainstream. I liked this idea very much, that soon after the book is released, that very evening, we have a discussion on it, bringing together scholars from all streams from all over the country, tirelessly acknowledging the significance of these Dalit writers and thinkers, their central role in forging India's modernity. But then we must ask, how do we remember them? The act of remembering is not neutral. It is incomplete, political, and often biased. The chapters of this book dig deeply into the historical, social, cultural, philosophical, and epistemological dimensions of Dalit studies, defining caste as an evolving social system, delving into larger instances of caste oppression, as well as microaggressions. I just loved that idea. They talk about the everyday microaggressions of the caste in our daily lives. The very new field of critical caste studies they talk about, the many manifestations of Dalit experience, like Dalit music, Dalit media, Dalit cinema, Dalit literature, environmentalism, feminism, historiography, detailing Dalit politics and movements, Dalit intersectionality, and ending with contemporary debates. Wow. This magnificent volume is consciously inclusive, bringing together many regional traditions and interdisciplinary methodologies, giving voice to lived experience, thereby ensuring that Dalit studies remains dynamic, self-reflexive, and intellectually expansive. Now, I wish to briefly analyze the specific contributions, especially in literature, because that is my field, primarily of regions such as West Bengal and Maharashtra, the very landscapes where modernity took shape through Renaissance movements. Through this analysis, I hope to demonstrate that Dalit Renaissance constitutes the very backbone of Indian modernity. In Maharashtra, the tradition of anti-caste thought initiated by Jyotirao Phule and B.R. Ambedkar has continued powerfully in the emergence of Dalit Panthers in the 1970s. With radical energy, they forged a militant, self-respecting Dalit identity in a deadly fusion of literary innovation and political praxis. Their manifesto expanded the category of Dalit to include all oppressed groups and destabilized the genteel foundations of Marathi literary culture. They insisted that literature must fearlessly confront the violence of caste directly and not sublimate it into some aesthetic distance. The Marathi Renaissance will not be complete without the Dalit writers and the thinkers. Writers and activists such as Namdev Dhazal and Baburao Bagul are pioneers of Marathi Dalit literature who reconfigured the use of language, literary form, and also purpose. Dhasal's poetry, for instance, draws from the stark realities of urban slums and uses an unpolished, raw, transgressive language that disrupts the so-called pure literary conventions on which the mainstream Renaissance was based. Bagul's prose also foregrounds the everyday realities of caste, fiercely refusing sentimentalization. In this tradition, literature becomes an act of witnessing and insurgency, a mode of asserting existence, dignity, and historical agency. In this manner, Dalit writing is rooted in an experiential or lived dimension that challenges canonical hierarchies and demands a rethinking of what can be defined as literary value, as Limbale and many others have already said. After the initial fiery surge of the 1970s, Marathi Dalit literature has significantly matured. It has broadened its thematic focus while maintaining its activist Ambedkarite fervor. In the 80s and 90s, Marathi Dalit literature moved from primarily collective testimonies of pain to more personal, psychological, self-reflexive narratives. Arjun Dangle or Sharmila Rege, etc. are examples. A pioneering work of this period is Sharan Kumar Limbale's Akarmashi, 1984, which introduced the haunting theme of the illegitimate or half-caste Dalit, which raises questions on identity, authenticity, and the psychological impact of caste on the so-called sacred institution of family. At the same time, Dalit feminist writing was emerging as a powerful counter-narrative, challenging the double marginalization of Dalit women by the upper castes, also within the Dalit communities themselves. Urmila Pawar's autobiography, Aidan, or The Weave of My Life, is a pioneering monumental work in this respect. Pawar creates in the women's bamboo weaving a powerful symbol of their resilience and a new autonomous identity. In the 21st century, writers like Pragya Daya Pawar, the daughter of Daya Pawar, have moved into deeper political analysis of neoliberalism and gender. Contemporary Dalit writers focus on urban existence and show a deeper engagement with the theory of Dalit literature. Yogesh Maitreya, Anand Teltumde have brought critical analysis of capitalism and caste into their works, such as Teltumde's Persistence of Caste, the Kerlanji Murders, and India's Hidden Apartheid. This book brings together sociological reportage and literary resistance. Shahu Patole, another writer who wrote about Dalit kitchens of Marathwada, delves into the cultural, social, and culinary histories of Dalit life, giving expression to a unique Dalit culture that exists separate from canonical mainstream Marathi life. Marathi Dalit literature has evolved into an insurgent intellectual movement that refuses to be sidelined as marginal voices lamenting pain. In West Bengal, the development of Dalit consciousness unfolds through a different historical and cultural formation. The Namasudra movement led by Harichand Thakur and his son Guruchand Thakur in colonial Bengal, they were 19th century writers and pioneers. It was a foundational socio-religious movement that transformed the untouchable Chandal community to a self-respecting, organized political force known as the Matwas. Their consciousness is profoundly socio-political, not just religious. The movement centered on human dignity, education, community, solidarity, and resistance to upper caste domination. All these are defining features of modernity. The Dalit movement in Bengal challenges the popular view that Bengal Renaissance was completely led by upper caste elites. The mainstream figures of the Renaissance in Bengal certainly ushered in a new age of social criticism, but we should not overlook the parallel and equally significant currents of anti-caste thinking that emerged from subaltern communities. The Namasudra or Matwa movement, in this sense, represents an alternative modernity, one in the lived struggles of the Dalits for dignity and recognition. While the Dalit movements of Maharashtra were more visibly politicized and institutionally recognized, the Bengali movements met with relative marginalization. I mean, the Dalit movements, maybe because of the supreme dominance of the upper caste Badalo culture and left politics. Yet, Bengali Dalit writing has, especially in recent times, begun to assert itself with more power. It engages with themes such as partition-related migration, refugees, caste-based exclusion, and the wiping out of subaltern histories. We cannot ignore the importance of the role of the Subaltern Studies Group and Gayatri Spivak from Bengal in this regard. The figure of the Dalit refugee in Bengal, especially in the aftermath of partition, becomes a trope for the intersection of caste with displacement, citizenship, and belonging. As I said, Bengali Dalit literature, except for Mahashweta Devi or some of the pioneers who gave voice to the Dalits, Dalit literature itself in Bengal is relatively invisible in national discourse. Now, what does this show? It shows the epistemic hierarchies within Indian literary studies. Knowledge is not a neutral discourse. It is highly stratified along lines of power and also caste. However, the growing presence of Bengali Dalit writers challenges these hierarchies, and Mandal Kondekar volume is a testimony to this. I don't want to go on and on talking throughout the time that has been assigned to me. I want to stop early so that there can be a discussion from the audience. I want to conclude with a few thoughts on pedagogy. Dalit studies will have a transformative impact on the future only when it penetrates the classroom even deeper. It should not be just an optional add-on, but be a central component of intellectual training in the curriculum. A defining train of thought related to Indian modernities and Renaissance. The classroom, after all, is a space for shaping perception. It is where students learn how to think. Books such as the one we have released today are invaluable precisely because they enable students to move beyond vague moral positions towards precise analytical frameworks and to question what they have taken for granted. And this book particularly shows how deeply penetrating Dalit studies is in every aspect of our existence. We cannot ignore the omniscient presence of Dalit studies in our daily lives, as well as in the academia. We live today in a time of great transformation with all the new technologies, new modes of language production, everything constantly reshaping our worlds. But even now, the questions of dignity, equality, and representation remain unresolved. We talk about it a lot in our books, but the actual lived reality of the Dalits is still, to a large extent, pathetic because of the deeply entrenched casteism in our minds, which we should not ignore. Books such as this remind us that modernity is an unfinished project, like the recently deceased Habermas reminded us. It is a process that requires constant rethinking, self-examination, vigilance, reflection, and engagement. I shall end with the thought that Dalit Studies key terms and concepts actually represents a commitment that we have shown not only by producing the book and releasing it, but also by discussing it. A commitment to understanding deeply, questioning, self-questioning, question ourselves first, and to transformation. When we celebrate the anniversary of this book, the release of this book, the first anniversary, the 10th anniversary, the 100th anniversary, we should not be the same. We should not still be talking about casteism in our minds. We should not be still having Dalit studies as a minor optional paper in our curriculum. I'm greatly privileged in that sense to be part of this meaningful discussion today. I look forward to your inputs, to your thoughts and ideas, which only will make my presentation complete and this discussion complete. The floor is open to discussion until the moderator permits us.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for your insightful keynote. We will take questions maybe after chair's talk. Sure. Now I invite the chairperson of this discussion, Professor Prabal Das Gupta. Before I invite him, I want to introduce him formally. Prabal Das Gupta is a globally renowned Indian linguist who received his PhD from New York University. His scholarship spans Bangla syntax, morphology, and sociolinguistics, with significant contribution to debates on language, society, and politics in India. His influential work, The Otherness of English, India's anti-tongue syndrome, remains a landmark in understanding the sociolinguistic position of English in India. He has taught at several premier institutions, including the University of Calcutta, the University of Hyderabad, and the Indian Statistical Institute, where he served as the head of the Linguistic Research Unit. Internationally, he has played a leading role in the Esperanto movement, serving as president of both the Universal Esperanto Association and the Academia de Esperanto. I invite Dr. Prabal Das Gupta for sharing this program and speaking for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kondekar. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I begin by thanking Dr. Kondekar and Dr. Mandal for inviting me. And I must emphasize before I begin my remarks that on this occasion, the Phule anniversary on the 11th and Ambedkar anniversary today, there is more than one engagement in which I am taking part. There is today's event, and on the 17th, Jadavpur University is organizing a session on Dalit Studies where the main speaker is no less a person than Anand Teltumre himself. He will speak online. So I will try today not to repeat what I'm going to say on the 17th. I hope you will forgive me. That is the day that I will make some comments on de-Brahminization. Today I will talk not about the book. The book has 47 chapters. It is impossible to talk about the book quickly. But I would like to talk about what brings me to this discussion, why I am committed to the cause, even though I belong to one of the upper castes. The fact that it has proved possible for 30 scholars to co-author the book, Dalit Studies, Key Terms and Concepts, from a self-conscious and critical position, and for Routledge to publish the book under the unpropitious conditions we are all familiar with, is a stupendous achievement. It is an achievement not only for the editors of the volume, Mahitosh, Mandal, and Sanjiv Kondekar, although our congratulations go to them first and foremost because they have had to steer the enterprise through these unpropitious circumstances. The publication of this volume is also an achievement for the other contributors, some of whom we listen to today, for the publisher's editorial team, for the many collaborators whose actions and patience cannot be itemized in the form of explicit thank you statements, even though the editors and the contributors have, of course, thanked many of these persons by name. What is it that makes a comprehensive listing of one's gratitude in this enterprise and similar enterprises impossible, even in principle? And why am I talking so much on matters that usually fall into parts of a text that are printed in tiny typeface, like a note listing the acknowledgements of the author or footnotes to the text? I'm focusing on contributions by invisible collaborators, partly because invisibility is one of the main enemies. It is a target of resistance by the newly salient minorities that are vocal today. Dalits are one such minority which has to make common cause with other minorities. But one other reason for my choice of focus is that I'm about to comment on certain differently invisible factors which have acted on me over the decades and made it possible for me, although I was born into the Baidya caste in Bengal, one of the top 3 castes, to become an ally of the Dalit movement. I would like to avoid turning this exercise into a verbal selfie. So I'm not going to begin what I wish to say at my end of the story. I'm the recipient. I wish to begin at the original benefactor whose generosity comes down to me through others. That benefactor had been invisible to me for several decades. And to this day, he is much less visible to the Indian public than the major icons in the history of the Dalit experience. I will not keep you in suspense any longer. The benefactor's name is Gurram Joshua. Born 1895, died 1971. He was a Dalit author. He wrote in Telugu. Rohit Vemula once characterized him as Mahakavi Gurram Joshua, the great poet Gurram Joshua. His epic, which appeared in 1941, often seen as Joshua's iconic work, is called Gabbilam. The Telugu word Gabbilam is a bat, as in a flying animal, not as in a bat that you're going to use in cricket and so on. Gabbilam is a counter-hegemonic response to Kalidas's Meghadutam. As you remember, in Kalidas's Meghadutam, the protagonist, a Yaksha, is asking the cloud to be a messenger and carry his message. In Joshua's long poem, the Dalit protagonist is talking to a bat messenger, asking the bat to carry the Dalit's message to Lord Shiva, but to pay attention and deliver the message only when there are no Brahmin priests present. The protagonist exclaims at one point, "You, being a bat, are allowed to enter temples, but I'm an untouchable. I can't go there. What right do I have to call myself a beneficiary of Mahakavi Joshua if I only heard of him for the first time in 1997? To answer this question, I will request your permission to go back to 1980 when I was 27 years old. I spent that year in Rotterdam in Western Europe. I was working as an intern at the Secretariat of the Global Association dedicated to Esperanto. This is an artificial international auxiliary language that I had learned as a teenager in the 1960s. The movement for Esperanto is a counter-hegemonic cultural project focused on people-to-people mutual understanding, but also devoted to the same cause as the Dalit movement, breaking hierarchy, promoting equality and emancipation. While I was working in Rotterdam. I received a letter from a fellow youngster, Ranganayakulu, who lived in Vijayawada, who had just learnt Esperanto. In his letter, he wrote, "Other than being interested in Esperanto, I'm an active member of the Nastika Kendram, the Atheist Center in Vijayawada. It is headed by Sri Lavanam and his wife, Dr. Hemalata. Sri Lavanam will be visiting Europe and he would like to meet you in Rotterdam, if you don't mind. He wishes to discuss what can be done to set up an Esperanto society in India." It turned out, much later I learned, that Lavanam's wife Hemalata was a daughter of the great poet, the Mahakavi Gurram Joshua. I did not know that in 1980. I only found out 17 years later. But let me go back to 1980. Lavanam and Hemalata, it turned out, were not only carrying forward the legacy of Lavanam's father, whom he mentioned when he met me, the social activist called Gora in the Telugu-speaking area. The full name was Goparaju Ramachandra Rao. He founded the Atheist Center. In the hands of Gora's son Lavanam and his wife Hemalata, the Atheist Center was also carrying forward the legacy of Hemalata's father, Joshua, though I was not told this in 1980. They viewed the pursuit of rationality and atheism as one way for upper caste Hindus to make common cause with Dalits, women, Muslims, Christians, and others who are disenfranchised by the hierarchical ideology of Brahmanism. You can imagine I had no idea of any of this when Lavanam, twice my age, walks into my office in 1980 and establishes personal rapport with me. He was a very disarming person. He began by casually chatting about how he could help Ranganayakulu, who was about my age, to start an Esperanto movement in India. Then he showed me the draft of a letter to the management of the International Association where I was working. He said, "Please edit and retype this. I'm told you are a very quick typist. Please correct all the mistakes in my grammar and my choice of words. Don't hesitate. I welcome all corrections. The letter has to be impeccable, right? We want to make a good impression." He was alone with me in the room. There were no witnesses. He was not making a public display of false sentiments. Lavanam was implementing his vision of educate, agitate, organize, a vision that the Atheist Center had taken over from the Dalit movement. Lavanam and the center in general believed in empowering the young. 2 years later, in 1982, Ranganayakulu, with assistance from Lavanam and Hemalata, convenes a national Esperanto meeting in Vijayawada. I was based in Maharashtra at the time, and of course I took part. Esperanto speakers from all corners of the country came to Vijayawada. We began to negotiate the terms on which we could set up a viable organization. The issue of an official address could not be resolved. We had various ideas and we couldn't get our heads together. Lavanam heard that there was a problem. He said, "Why don't you write Indian Esperanto Association, care of Atheist Center, Vijayawada? We'll be happy to forward all the mail to whoever needs the mail." That was it. Other countries had sometimes set up their National Esperanto Society under the auspices of the dominant religion of the country. India had the privilege of doing this at the Atheist Center, away from Brahminical or other religious domination. That is all I knew in 1980, 1982. Now I jump to 1997. By then I had moved to the University of Hyderabad. Quite a few years earlier, I was used to the city. I thought I knew what to expect. So imagine my surprise when I find Lavanam knocking at my door, at the door of my house. I had not been in touch with him for years. He was saying hello as if we had been meeting all the time. He had a friend with him, the famous Bengali poet Shankho Ghosh, who was the same age as Lavanam. Lavanam said, "Shankho tells me he's a friend of yours," as they walked in. "We are giving Shankho the Joshua Award from 1997. That is why he is in Hyderabad." I managed to ask a question. Lavanam explained. Joshua was my father-in-law, Prabal. It was his birth centenary in 1995. We are now taking initiatives to remember him properly. This award is one of the steps we've been able to take, one step at a time, as you know. Then he laughed his characteristic laughter. Then he broke the difficult news. Prabal, our friends will be waiting at the radio station this afternoon. We have a car. Please take Shankar Babu there at 2:30. You will have to interview him live. Shankar Ghosh had not had any warning of this plan. I am going to be interviewed? He asked with some consternation. And by you? He knew me as a grammarian. He was rightly apprehensive about putting my understanding of poetry to the test. He spent the early afternoon coaching me as best he could. If you are dying to know what happened at Akashvani Hyderabad that afternoon, please feel free to ask Shankoda's daughter, Shemunti Ghosh, for a copy of the recording of that interview. Now I get back to the main theme today. Don't let me get lost in what happened at the radio station. For reasons very different from Lavanam's reasons, the generation of Bengali poets to which Shankar Ghosh belonged had given Esperanto activism their unstinting support as well throughout the 1970s. What is relevant today is the specific support given to the Esperanto movement by the major essayist and literary critic Shivnarayan Rai. Rai made room for Esperanto-related writings by me and many other authors in his quarterly periodical called Jiggasa. Shivnaranda was politically committed to the cause of a socio-cultural awakening, he called it a renaissance, that would be all-inclusive and would have the effect of reversing the social subordination of lower castes and Dalits. Exactly as in the case of Lavanam, Shivnarayan Rai's political position had to do with his own antecedents. He had been part of the circle of young people who interacted with M.N. Roy in the 1940s, in M.N. Roy's final years, and Shivnarayan Rai embraced M.N. Roy's latter-day program of democratic social transformation. This brought Shivnarayan Rai, who worked in Maharashtra for several years in the 1950s, into contact with Meghusham Pundalik Rege and Lakshman Shastri Joshi. Joshi had been a personal friend of M.N. Roy's and was well known as a scholar steeped in Brahminical knowledge, who had forsaken the Brahminical cause and moved into rationality, atheism, and the annihilation of caste and other hierarchical features. MP Rege, independently of his association with M.N. Roy, which made him a friend of Shivnarayan Rai, had also been a key member of B.R. Ambedkar's inner circle. Rege felt responsible for carrying forward Ambedkar's project of subjecting the Hindu Dharma Shastras to a serious critique, with some help from Lakshman Shastri Joshi and other like-minded friends. You will thus not be surprised to hear that Shivnarayan Rai, throughout his adult life, used every means possible to further not only the rationalist and atheist agenda that he shared with M.N. Roy, but also the opposition to caste in general and to the marginalization of Dalits in particular, which Shivnarayan Rai had picked up from his Maharashtrian friends, such as MP Rege, who was a direct disciple of Ambedkar. Ideologically speaking, Shivnarayan Rai's cultural support for my writing about Esperanto literature, another emancipatory movement, was parallel to the support given to the organizational side of the Esperanto enterprise in India by Lavanam and Hemalata. I would argue that Lavanam and Hemalata's support should really be seen as support coming posthumously from Hemalata's father, Gurram Joshua, who saw the Dalit cause as needing allies outside the Dalit movement. At this point, perhaps I should mention that Joshua was a Christian Dalit, as were his parents. One of his parents was a Dalit, another parent was an OBC, and they had found refuge in the Christian community, which didn't care about the caste hierarchy. that much, though there is caste also in Christianity, as you know. I have focused understandably on how Dalit and Dalit adjacent cultural power in India was favorably disposed to the work that some of us were doing in the Esperanto movement from the 70s and 80s onwards. I should also note that there is indebtedness in the other direction as well. After Rohit Vemula's tragic suicide in 2016, I posted about the issue, about Rohit Vemula's suicide and about the Dalit issue on my Facebook wall several times. My posts on Facebook were noticed by some of my European friends who belong to the Esperanto movement and who knew me through the Esperanto movement. Those friends in Europe said to me, why don't you write a full-fledged article, Prabal, in Esperanto? You can write for the monthly magazine in Esperanto called Monato, which everybody reads. So I wrote such an article on the basis of extensive consultations with my former student, Rekha Abel, who is also a Christian Dalit. She was a natural choice. She is a Dalit. Her upper caste husband is one of the leaders of the Indian Esperanto organization. So as you see, certain social milieu in the more than 100 countries where Esperanto is actively spoken, learnt about Rohit Vemula's suicide and what happened after it in greater depth than people who read media in French or German or Japanese or Chinese. You need to appreciate that the Indian Dalit movement is better known in Anglophone societies outside India than in societies that get their information in French or German or Japanese or Chinese. We have not yet launched a worldwide mobilization to inform all the potential allies about what we are doing in India in the Dalit movement and among allies of the Dalit movement such as myself. Obviously, I'm not remotely denying the fact that there's a huge asymmetry of gratitude here. Nobody would dream of saying that the Esperanto microcosm has repaid its debt to the Dalit movement merely by publishing an article by Prabal Dasgupta about Rohit Vemula's death and its immediate consequences that year. Our indebtedness to our friends and allies in general becomes a permanent fact about us. Debts to our friends can never be repaid. The question of repaying this debt does not arise. My saying this may remind you of the quotation from Love's Story. Love means never having to say you're sorry. But I hope I have not been speaking in that sentimental tone of voice which is dominant in Love's Story. The sentimental tone, unfortunately, reeks of hierarchical sentiment and is part of the malady that Dalit Studies tries to diagnose and eliminate in every nook and cranny of the cultures we inhabit. But this huge effort calls for energy and patience. I hope I have not used up all your patience. Prabal takes a quick look at the clock. Thank you again for allowing me to take part in this discussion of the major book that was launched this morning at the Diksha Bhumi. My way of showing my respect for the collective that has put this book together is to tell the stories I have just told you about the past collectives which have supported the work I do for cultural emancipation. All the proximate benefactors mentioned in my story have passed away. Lakshman Shastri Joshi died in 1994. MP Rege died in 2000. Hemalata in 2008. Shiv Narayan Rai in 2008. Lavanam in 2015. Shankha Ghosh in 2021. Individual death is inevitable. The death of cultural evils is not inevitable. We have to work hard so that caste dies, so that the word Dalit becomes in future a mere marker of a tragic memory, the way scars on our body remind us painlessly of the fact that we once got hurt but that future is very far away. Today, I wish to close my remarks by remembering what was said by the French author Albert Camus, who came from an underprivileged background in Algeria, as some of you know. In his book, The Rebel, Camus, in a counterpoint to the famous statement by René Descartes, I think, therefore I am, Camus says, the slogan of the rebel is, I rebel, therefore we exist. The we, the collective we that takes the rebellion forward, is born out of the individual deciding to rebel. When an individual rebels, the individual needs and finds allies, which is how the we is born. The Dalit Studies academic enterprise of the larger enterprise, which is the Dalit movement for emancipation, is still at the stage of individual discoveries, individual rebellions, individual hand-holding with others who are reaching out for support and finding these lateral connections and moving forward. That is why I have told you the stories of which kinds of hand-holding I come from. And I'm hoping that this will give you some kind of basis for a different understanding of the lateral support that all of you have been giving each other, the way you're finding new allies and trying to understand why they're your allies. Because if you don't understand why your allies have become your allies, you're running the risk of letting opportunists into your room, and then you will fall for a scam, and you don't want that to happen. That is why we need to be sure of each other's genuineness, which is why I've put all my cards on the table. I hope that you do not find this irrelevant. Thank you very much for inviting me here and for having the patience to listen to all this. Bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, before making this floor open for discussion, I must thank Lokayat Prakashan from Satara for hosting this program. I thank Rakesh Sarunke sir and Pulukeshi for handling all the technicalities. Now, I ask Pulukeshi to just open the settings so that people can ask questions.
And also, if I can, I don't know if I can intervene a bit. I think,
no problem.
yeah, I think Dr. Gajendran Ayathurai, eminent anti-caste scholar, is among the audience. Gajendran, is it possible that you could say a few words? Can you hear me or?
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes. So we would be really grateful if you could make a few comments. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the move right now, so I'm not able to switch on the videos. I'll just speak it out like this. Is that
That's
okay?
fine. Absolutely
Okay.
fine. Absolutely fine.
To be very frank, this is an amazing get together, and thank you for putting together this volume and the democratic way, all the regions and people from across the country and from across the world are participating. So it's definitely welcomable, and it's a great contribution. And the voice of the caste oppressed has to be recorded in that sense. And and it's not one or two persons recording it. Diverse set of people. People from different genders and regions and linguistic, aspects and as well as disciplines. They are all participating. So that way, I think it's a great vision has gone into the making. So it's great. So I definitely appreciate. I would like to read and then get to know about each author's contribution. And I'm also glad you've been very generous to include a chapter from Divya on critical caste studies. It's important, and thankfully, I think we are all trying to attack this notorious problem, and that South Asian studies across the world. But I've lived in 3 continents right now, and I've been terribly, terribly disappointed from, I've been trained in South Asian studies, anthropology, history, and so on. It's been a big, big disappointment because at the most, they now begin to drop the word Dalit to talk about, be it in the US or in Europe now, and as is the case in India. But they don't want to talk about the problem of caste, particularly Brahmin power. And you don't have to go deep into this. We know recently a report on Indian judiciary clearly says that judiciary is dominated by this 4% of India's population, Brahmins, who are controlling judiciary. Literally, 75% of the judges and so on are Brahmins. So I think the trend right now I see is that there is a tremendous, that is my worry about what they do with this Dalit point of view. There is a condescension. By the way, students and scholars are getting invited to, Western academia by clearly probing the background of students and scholars. This is atrocious, and there is a condescension. Hopefully, some of the contributors from this volume are taken seriously at the center, taking that perspective seriously and to keep them at the center, not yet another condescending attitude to some of these authors. That's my worry. That's precisely the reason I thought I would move away from, including using the word Dalit to come up with a frontal attack on caste. Therefore, I call it as critical caste studies. And I'm glad it is picking it up really well. And definitely, I'm person from caste imposed background. I'm moving into that kind of an understanding. Caste is, you never settle down to own up the identity of untouchability or lower caste and so on. It's been imposed. So the caste imposed authors, it's time to speak, and they all have different voices. They have to be taken seriously, and they should be at the center, and they should not be treated in yet another way, condescending way, to keep them at the margins. So I think this volume could open up and say, oh, hey, there are multiple voices interrogating the problem of caste and recentering the caste imposed. It's time we take seriously. That way, I think this volume will open up. And I hope, right now, you'll be shocked to hear this. South Asian studies or modern Indian studies in the West is dominated literally, as I write in my book, by Brahmins or their partners, literally their husbands or boyfriends or girlfriends, white folks. So the Brahmins and whites are dominating, and it's time we interrogate that. And hopefully this volume is taken, makes a profound impact so that people from caste imposed background, women and men and transgender people, are given the due importance in South Asian studies. It's high time the majority of such academics and scholars and students, researchers, assume their important contribution regarding South Asian studies. So I really appreciate Mahitosh, for giving me this opportunity, and I wanted to listen to you all. That's why I participated. I'm glad a whole lot of scholars from across the world are also participating. I appreciate this, and so thank you so much, Mahitosh. Sorry if I have taken a little longer. Thank you so much.
No. Thank you, Gajendran. I just wanted to tell you that your thought has immensely shaped the way we think about and think against the caste system. So thank you very much for all the work you have done. And I'm sure Divya will be really, really happy to have heard to you. And throughout the book, we have tried to refer to your works. Divya put together all your major works so that she could develop a consistent argument. Thank you very much. Your presence means a lot to us. I mean, more than you can imagine. So from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the team, we really thank you. Thank you a lot.
generous of you. So thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. If we can take some, maybe 2-3 questions. If anybody has any question or any
Comments, suggestions.
comments, suggestions, remarks to make, please unmute and speak. I think you can unmute yourself because the setting has been changed. Mahitosh sir, I think there are no questions or remarks, comments.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello, it's amazing to hear such speakers, and it's a kind of eye-opener for me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. So, though I could not join at time and I was a bit late, but I could hear some of the excerpts and arguments, and I could hear Dr. Professor Gajendra also. So, I had one question from the experts, or maybe anyone who would like to answer. I'm from northern India, like from the heart of North India, from Rajasthan. So somewhere as an academician and as a person who is working with you can say post-colonial history, I feel that there is a huge divide between South India and North India as far as the questions and issues of Dalits are concerned. Somewhere there is a kind of complexity and there is a kind of, you can say, let it go kind of an attitude as far as any reformist or any you can say raise your voice movement is concerned. In northern India there is a kind of silence, I feel. And as far as the south is concerned, they are more into reform, they are more into movements, and they are more vocal about the issues and the problems and the ground reality. So is it related with, like as Professor Gajendra said, that the supremacy and you can say the canon, the Brahminical canon, they are so powerful in North India that uh, all other voices who are on margins, they are not heard, and maybe they don't take the courage to come and take their due share in history and in the current political scenario. So I would really like to listen from you people who are such an eminent experts in their own fields and such a brilliant speaker. So I would really like to have your opinion. What do you think about this divide?
Eleni ma'am.
Sir, actually, the people from northern part of India should talk about it. Why are they silent? I am eagerly waiting to listen to the answers. Definitely, ma'am. You have raised
sir. Sanjiv
Ah,
sir.
yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can be a fit
He
person
has
to
raised a
speak
very
on this.
valid point.
This is quite true when we see in the academia that caste divide is there, and I, as teaching into university in North India, especially in my region, I don't interact with the South and North divide, but caste divide is very much inherent. We can't ignore this fact. And the reason which I have tried to figure out is that it's a sense of insecurity where earlier Dalits, and I can also include OBCs, as Kancha Ilaiah uses this term Dalit Bahujan to include this wider Bahujan group. They have also started into knowledge production. Earlier, what was that? Knowledge production was confined to upper caste people only, and lower caste, if I use lower on quote word, it was just confined to knowledge consumption. And now there is a threat that if parallel epistemology is built and parallel knowledge production happens, there is a problem with them. Like it can be replaced. Like Mahitosh has already put into the beginning that all Dalit studies and all these things, they begin with the footnote to Ambedkar. So all modern epistemology and pedagogy and education and knowledge, specifically knowledge systems, it begins with the footnote of the Brahminical authors or Brahmin authors, or let's say authors with Brahminical ideology. So this is one thing that I believe, and I also experience that this hegemony is getting challenged. And in last 20, 30 years, if I see, more critical works have emerged which are in the parallel systems of knowledge productions. And therefore, this anxiety of the upper caste to accept lower caste, or again, this lower and lowered, I always disagree with that. It is creating a sense of discomfort. Maybe I have tried to answer her curiosity, but it was a large question, so I could not figure out every detail. But for me, in North India, this is the case, and in South India also, this can be the case, I guess. Yes.
In the south of India, we have had so many reformers, and the idea of Renaissance and Reformation are so deeply entrenched in the Malayali psyche, the Tamil psyche, the Kannada psyche. And we maybe I also attribute a little bit of the liberal thinking to English education in the South. In the coastal regions of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, convent education did a big, contribution towards limiting the problems of the casteist thinking, I think. I'm not an expert in it, but there was a balance struck. I think if somebody would like to respond to this, I would be eager to hear your views as well. I think that is one logical reason for liberal thinking in the South. I don't know if I'm totally right. Do you agree to this?
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
If I'm allowed, I can say a few things about what the question has been asked.
Yeah, in a few minutes. Sorry.
I'm Dr. British. I'm Dr. British. A few of you may be knowing me. I'm colleague of Dr. Sanjiv and student of Dr. Kalyani Bhagat Madam. She knows me. By the way, what I have seen here in academia and most of the universities, other places, when Dalits or other Dalit Bahujan, as Kancha Ilaiah has just quoted this very phrase, when they try whenever they try for the knowledge production from all directions, you would find that they are like suppressed by different sort of things. Like people, they would come up and say they have created a caucus. The Brahminical powers have created a sort of caucus. And that's why whoever, even if someone tries, and that's why I find that many people, they, in one way or other way, they try to like hide their identities. They like to, go on whatever they are being told by those powers, by those people. And alternative forces, alternative, thoughts are not that much appreciated, that much liked and given space to. So as far as South India is concerned, I have been there also in some of the regions like Kerala. I have been there in Karnataka and Maharashtra. in Andhra Pradesh a few days I stayed there. So there I have seen that people, they are like more liberal and more like they accept the things better than what things are accepted here in North India. No matter how highly educated a person is here, but you would find the subtle form of casteism there in his brain is very, like you see, veins in blood everywhere. From outside, they try hard. Every time you find that they try hard, they try to appropriate, they say the good words. But the reality is this, that whenever they get chance, they try to suppress with all the means, with all the possible efforts. And that's why perhaps what I feel that this the madam has seen this divide between North India and the South India. I think that I have given some ideas on this, and that is my lived experience also being a Dalit and also being an assistant professor at a university. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we should stop here. We will have some more discussions throughout the year, and you are all welcome there. So I invite Dr. Mandal sir to just conclude the session with vote of thanks and the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Kondekar. We are past 9, so very quickly in one or couple of minutes I'll conclude and give vote of thanks. So obviously, I would at the very outset like to sincerely thank Lokayat Prakashan for hosting this event. They have been generous and very much have been cooperating with us in the last couple of days. I'd like to thank all the contributor speakers who voluntarily wanted to be part of the session. Thank you very much, everyone who gave their presentations. And I mean, of course, Damayanti Das, Dhanesh Mankulam, Anubha Anusri, Priyanka Chaudhary, Sanjiv Kumar Vishwakarma, all dear colleagues, thank you very much for joining us today. I'd like to thank Dr. Kallani Balath ma'am. This is the first time I heard her speak. It was a brilliant speech that she delivered. Specifically liked this formulation that to annihilate caste, we need to annihilate ourselves. That kind of a formulation that she came up with, that does it mean you have to annihilate ourselves? It was a very interesting remark, and we need to think about it, what it means to annihilate caste. Does it also mean to annihilate a part of ourselves to begin with? So thank you very much, ma'am. Overall, it was a brilliant presentation, and you took out time from your absolutely busy schedule. I know that. So thank you very much for being part of this inaugural session. I would like to thank Professor Probal Dasgupta for specifically mentioning why we need to be vigilant about what is known as alliance or solidarity. That was a very important point that he concluded with as he, developed this brilliant outline and trajectory of his encounter with the anti-caste discourse. So thank you, Professor Dasgupta. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak, on a short notice. So sincere thanks to you. And I thank Dr. Kondekar for really making it. He was very busy throughout the day and making it to the event. Overall, absolutely, for all the participants who joined us from across the country, responded to our call for participation, registered in time, and those who asked questions, those who did not. And of course, I would like to thank Dr. Rajendran Ayathurai, who has always been there for important moments in anti-caste discourse. Thank you very much for agreeing to make a few remarks, absolutely valuable remarks. So thank you very much. With that, we end our discussion. Did I miss out on anything, Dr. Kondekar?
No, absolutely fine.
Absolutely fine. So thank you very much. Please join us in the next session. This is a series of, this is the first event in the series of book discussions on this event. So please join us in the next event. We will inform you in time. Thank you very much once again.